What happened between you?
He knows what he did. She was my wife. You Wookiee sack of.
Hollywood loves its legends clean, polished, and uncomplicated, but Harrison Ford was never built for myth-making. He was built for conflict, and for decades that conflict simmered behind a face the world mistook for calm. Audiences saw Han Solo's smirk and Indiana Jones's swagger, and assumed the man behind him shared the same easy confidence. But the truth was sharper, colder, and far more unforgiving. Ford navigated the industry like a man carrying a private code, a code built on respect, precision, and a ruthless intolerance for ego-driven chaos. And when those lines were crossed, he didn't yell or bargain or play political games. He shut doors, killed projects, severed partnerships, and walked away without a backward glance. Now at 82, with his legacy cemented and nothing left to protect, that silence is finally cracked, revealing the list of actors who pushed him too far, who mocked his discipline, questioned his craft, or humiliated productions he considered sacred. A list that explains why so many great pairings never happened, why certain films died before cameras rolled, and why some careers were reshaped in ways neither the public nor the studios ever acknowledged. What follows isn't gossip. It's the anatomy of 7 feuds that turned sound stages into battlegrounds, shredded supposed friendships, and exposed the side of Harrison Ford only his co-stars ever saw. And once you see it, you'll never look at his performances the same way again. Shia LaBeouf. The most explosive fracture of Ford's later career began on the set of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in 2007-08, where a 65-year-old Ford returned to an icon he had built from bone and bruises, only to discover his new on-screen son had no interest in sharing the frame by Ford's rules. Shia LaBeouf, fresh off the adrenaline of Transformers, approached scenes as emotional brawls while Ford treated them like mechanical engineering, calibrating every pause, every breath, every gesture with the same brutal precision Spielberg demanded in the early 80s. Stunt coordinator Vic Armstrong described the clash as 2 different languages spoken at full volume as Ford halted takes, visibly irritated by improvisations that detonated his timing. And while the set never descended into shouting, crew members remembered a kind of cold warfare, LaBeouf pushing instinct, Ford pushing control, neither willing to yield ground. But the real betrayal came after release, when LaBeouf publicly trashed the film, telling reporters, "The actor's job is to make it work, and I couldn't do it," before dragging Ford into the mud by saying Ford wasn't happy with it either, a move Ford considered sacrilege. In Details magazine, he responded with a line as clean and lethal as a blade. "I think I told him he was a fucking idiot," then clarified that an actor's duty was to protect the film, not torch it when microphones appear. LaBeouf spiraled into arrests, rehab, and tabloid collapse, while Ford returned years later for Dial of Destiny without his on-screen heir, without reconciliation, without apology, and without even a narrative mention of the character audiences expected, a surgical erasure only one man could have greenlit, punctuated by Ford's final verdict: "To bite the hand that feeds you, it's bullshit," proving that for him betrayal wasn't just offensive, it was disqualifying. Tommy Lee Jones. If LaBeouf represented youthful arrogance, Tommy Lee Jones represented something far more dangerous, a rival alpha, equally disciplined, equally territorial, and equally unwilling to bend. And nowhere was that collision more brutal than on the set of The Fugitive in 1993, where Ford's demand for structural precision collided with Jones's jazz-like improvisation, turning every shared scene into a silent test of dominance. Director Andrew Davis later admitted Ford feared being overshadowed by Jones, whose performance prowled every frame like a predator circling wounded prey, and crew members described the atmosphere as 2 wolves locked on the same kill, neither blinking first. The tension became undeniable during the tunnel confrontation scene, where Jones switched lines mid-take, detonating Ford's rehearsed timing and forcing heated discussions about professional courtesy. Discussions that produced no screaming but plenty of ice. Ford carried the emotional weight of the film, but award season cut deep. Jones walked away with an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, while Ford, the haunted heart and spine of the story, was left empty-handed, and Davis later called it Ford's greatest performance, a verdict Ford quietly agreed with but never celebrated. After that humiliation, he refused to appear in the 1998 spin-off U.S. Marshals, distanced himself from anything connected to the franchise, and never spoke warmly of Jones again. Respect remained, but it was soaked in bitterness, and in a business fueled by fragile egos, the idea of 2 legends sharing the same frame again became a fantasy no studio dared push, because even Hollywood knows some wolves don't hunt in pairs. Sean Young. If Tommy Lee Jones represented rivalry and Shia represented betrayal, Sean Young represented something far more psychologically corrosive: forced intimacy without trust, and the set of Blade Runner in 1982 became the crucible where that collision burned. Ford, exhausted from 50 consecutive nights of rain-soaked shooting, approached the role of Deckard with surgeon's detachment, measuring scenes like equations. But Young refused to exit her replicant persona even off-camera, forcing Ford to navigate conversations without knowing whether he was speaking to the actress or the character, a choice Ridley Scott later admitted was intentional. The supposed love scene, marketed as cold noir romance, was in reality a detonation of resentment, confusion, and mutual disdain, and cinematographer Jordan Cronenweth would later call it the most awkward professional chemistry I've ever witnessed, while crew quietly renamed it the hate scene, because nothing about the moment resembled seduction except the choreography. Ford later confessed working with Young felt like a psychological minefield, and decades later Young added darker accusations, claiming Scott pressured her to date him and that the scene was retaliation when she refused. Allegations never proven, never directly answered, but which only deepened the fracture. When Blade Runner 2049 arrived 35 years later, Ford returned. But Young didn't. Her character was resurrected not as a co-star, but as a CGI replica, a choice that said more than any interview ever could. Because in Hollywood, silence is never neutral, and in Ford's world, silence is punishment. Julia Roberts. Hollywood executives dreamed of pairing Harrison Ford and Julia Roberts in a sweeping romance that would merge the gravitas of an old-school masculine icon with the box office glow of America's sweetheart. But dreams collapse quickly when chemistry refuses to obey contracts, and from the first rehearsal the gulf between them became a canyon. Roberts approached the material with her trademark warmth, charm, and emotional brightness, but Ford remained cold, distant, and unreactive, as if every line were filtered through a wall of glass. Director Mike Nichols later admitted it felt like two instruments playing in different keys, and cinematographer Sven Nykvist remembered a crucial love scene falling apart in real time, describing it as the absence of chemistry, so profound it became fascinating to watch. Roberts, frustrated, later confided Ford was emotionally unavailable even in character, while Ford shrugged off the pairing with a line that was surgical in its cruelty. It felt like acting opposite a performance, not a person, a sentence that didn't just critique technique, it erased compatibility. The project died quietly without scandal, without premiere, without studio spin, just paperwork dissolving into silence, and the two stars never worked together again, never shared a red carpet, never even staged polite proximity for photographers. A veteran producer summed it up with bitter elegance. They didn't hate each other, they just occupied different emotional universes. And in Hollywood, incompatible universes don't collide, they go extinct. Kevin Costner. If Roberts represented a failed romantic fantasy, Kevin Costner represented a failed artistic alliance, a collision of visions that killed what could have been a genre-defining Western before a single frame was shot. Ford wanted a slow-burn character piece about the psychological cost of violence, about the marrow-deep loneliness of men who kill professionally, while Costner wanted Sky's mythic grandeur, sweeping heroism, and romantic scale, two films built from the same script but aimed at different horizons. Producer Lawrence Kasdan put it bluntly. They were making different movies using the same pages, and as revisions circulated, each draft shrank as one man trimmed the other's arc, turning collaboration into subtraction. The quiet war escalated until Ford confronted Costner directly, asking, "Do you even care what this character is carrying? What he's lost?" And Costner shot back, "You're trying to turn an epic into a therapy session, an exchange so incompatible it became the death certificate of the project." There were no screaming matches, no studio intervention, just the most brutal weapon Ford ever used: silence, followed by cancellation. The aftermath reshaped both men. Ford never returned to that kind of Western introspection, while Costner doubled down, building Open Range and later Yellowstone into his personal empire. They never shared a set, never shared a stage, and never spoke publicly about the collapse, because not all cinematic tragedies are loud. Some die in the boardroom before Hollywood even notices the corpse. Brad Pitt. If Costner represented incompatible visions, Brad Pitt represented incompatible leadership, and the set of The Devil's Own in 1997 became the battleground where two very different forms of cinematic control collided. Pitt had spent years developing the story as a moral labyrinth about divided loyalties and Irish trauma, while Ford arrived as the veteran whose presence demanded narrative balance. And neither man would surrender ground. Ford quietly pushed for rewrites that expanded the moral complexity of his cop, later admitting, "Brad had a good part, and I wanted complication on my side, a confession that revealed everything." Pitt wanted tragedy, Ford wanted equilibrium, and the script became the rope pulled between them. Crew members described the environment as two captains steering the same ship, and because neither raised their voice, the set became a cold war of silence rewrites and subtle power plays. Producers kept rewriting scenes deep into the shoot, not to improve the story but to satisfy the gravitational pull of two stars whose reputations cannot afford surrender. And though the film eventually limped across the finish line, it carried the scar tissue of compromise. Years later, Ford softened publicly, calling Pitt a wonderful actor and a really decent guy. And Pitt returned the courtesy in interviews, but the most telling detail was what never happened afterward: a reunion. In Hollywood, silence is data, and the absence of round two confirmed what everyone in the editing room already knew: no film can serve two captains without sinking its compass.